I was not a very good student. Throughout high school and undergraduate studies, and even early on in med school, my brutally inefficient study habits consisted of procrastination, short term memory recall, and heavy reliance on test day performance and prayers. Yeah, I'm not proud of that. The worst part is, it was an endless cycle. It happened year after year, semester after semester. It wasn't until second year med school, when I was staring at the face of some huge board exams, that maybe my short-term memory and prayers are not gonna be enough this time. And no, this is not a video to motivate you to not procrastinate. In my opinion, everybody procrastinates to some degree, and you can find way better motivational videos on YouTube than whatever I can provide here. And I'm also not gonna just go over a few studying techniques and shove them in your face, because in my opinion, the process of learning and studying is highly individualized and situational. I mean, is it really worth doing Cornell notes for calculus? And what good is the Feynman's technique of learning if you're trying to memorize the taxonomy levels in biology? The intention of this video is to highlight certain strategies and actions that you might consider incorporating into your studying habits. Of course, with some tweaking and customization to best fit you, and hopefully you'll start seeing much better results and, like me, gain some confidence in yourself as a learner and student. First, let's take a look at the scenario here. Let's say you receive a phone call from your dentist reminding you that you have an appointment next Friday at 9 a.m. in the morning. As you listen, you nod and you write it down and you make a note. Now imagine that you're very busy with a lot of things on your plate. You see how it's very likely that you might forget about the appointment after a day or two, or maybe even after a few hours. And although you've written it down, there might be a chance that you completely forgotten that you've even written down the appointment. Imagine this second scenario now. After hanging up the phone, your friend who's sitting beside you asks you what the phone call was about. To which you reply, "Oh, it's just a reminder for my dentist appointment next Friday at 9 a.m. And your friend, who happens to take the same course as you, asks, "Don't we have a midterm that same Friday in the morning?" And that completely throws you off, because now you're thinking, "Uh-oh, I might have double booked." So you quickly scramble and check your calendar, and you find out that the midterm is actually scheduled for the Friday after the dentist appointment. You probably won't be shocked to find that it is less likely for you to forget the appointment in the second scenario than it is in the first scenario. But why? All you did was talk to your friend for 30 seconds at most? In those 30 seconds, your brain was forced to actively think. Not once, but twice. The first time was when you had to answer his or her question regarding what the phone call was about. And the second time was when you're panicking and thinking, "Oh, did I double book on Friday? As you're thinking and searching through the calendar, your brain was actively thinking. And as you'll see, getting your brain to actively think is the fundamental basis to everything I will talk about in this video. Now, studying is pretty broad, so we're gonna break it down into 3 components. You got learning, note-taking, and revision or memorization. All 3 are heavily linked to each other. You can't really take good notes unless you fully learn the concept. And if you have good notes, then the revision and reviewing process becomes a lot less stressful and takes a lot less time. Starting off with learning. The first important thing is not a technique or a strategy, it's a mindset, and it is to be an honest learner. What I mean by that is, you have to be completely honest with yourself when it comes to whether or not you understand something before moving on to the next concept. And when the time for revision comes, you're going to struggle a lot because you didn't understand fully a lot of things you should have learned earlier, and now it's too late to learn them. The second thing is to organize and order the concepts that you're learning. Although this step is very time consuming and very stressful, I can't stress how important this is in the role it plays to make your note taking better, as well as to making the revision process easier. Whether you're only using one source, like a textbook or your teacher's notes, or combining multiple sources, which are more likely when you're learning in university or postgraduate, you can't just take what you read on each page for what it is. For example, when you're watching a movie and you're watching the scene after scene, your brain's not actually just absorbing scene after scene. Your brain is making connections between this scene and a few scenes back because of different character progressions and storylines. You have to do the same thing when it comes to studying. Whether you're looking at your teacher's notes or your PowerPoint slides or the textbook, your brain should be actively thinking and ordering the ideas so that it makes sense in your head. By doing that, you're making a lot of connections between different materials and concepts, and these concepts are very unlikely to be forgotten once you've firmly established it, so it makes your life easier later on anyway. Number 3, saying it out loud, which is pretty much Feynman's technique. A huge misconception that students have is that when they're reading or watching or listening to some material and they feel like they understand and they're following along, they actually believe they understand it. Not true. You don't really understand something unless you're able to reteach it or at the very least say it out loud. And in most cases, even though you feel like you understand something, the moment that you have to say it out loud, you'll start stumbling and struggling at parts where you think you understood, but you didn't. And the only way to catch those is if you force yourself to either teach someone else or sing it out loud. The fourth and final thing for learning is to take breaks. Now, this is similar to the Pomodoro clock, and even Andrew Huberman backs it up, but I think we can approach that with a more open mind in terms of how often we do it and how long the breaks should be. But definitely take breaks. Your brain can't handle too much new information at once. It needs time to marinate and let it soak in. What I like to do in these breaks is to just walk around. I would pace around for anywhere between 30 seconds to a few minutes, and as I'm pacing, I'm just mumbling and talking to myself, but by doing that, I'm relearning everything I just learned. Science has shown that if you give your brain some break time, your brain is actually relearning the things you just learned, but like 10 times faster. So you don't need to sit there for 2-3 hours straight to show that you're learning well. No, you can sit there for half an hour, 15 minutes, or 1 hour, depending on the concept you're learning, and then just spending half a minute to a few minutes of walking or just sitting there not doing anything, but giving your brain some break time could increase your understanding and retention by a significant amount. Now let's talk about note-taking. The first thing in note-taking is also not a technique or a strategy, but again, a mindset. Think about it. When do you take notes? Well, you're going to write down notes after you learn something, right? But at the moment after you learn something, you're very sharp and you're very clear with that concept. So if you're taking notes with that mentality, your notes will be understandable only and if only your mindset is at that level. But when do we use our notes? We typically look and use our notes for revision before the test, which could be a few weeks or months later down the road. By then, our brain will not be in the same state for this concept, which is why a lot of times students would say, hey, I understood this and I made notes, but now I'm looking back and I don't understand my own notes, so I have to relearn. So the mindset you should have when you're making notes is you're writing your notes for your future self who probably understands this as much as you did before learning this concept. Since you went through the struggles of learning this and you know what was hard for you or things that you have to keep in mind of, write those down. You're pretty much writing down instructions and warnings and reminders and hints to your future self because you're most likely going to have the same confusions and struggles as you did earlier. Number 2, strategical structure. What does that even mean? I'm sure you've heard before that when you're taking notes, you should always do it in point form and not in paragraphs. Okay, fine. But just because you're doing it in point form, it doesn't mean the notes are good. You can have an entire page of just bullet points with nothing standing out and no structure, and it's not going to help your brain pick out important parts or kind of see thought progression through the notes. One really cool thing about notes is that you can manipulate the structure and organization of the notes to help illustrate concepts as well. Through little tricks as using arrows or differences in indentations or different styles of bullet points, you can actually make certain concepts easier to understand, which is why I think that when you're taking notes, it's useful to combine typing elements for bullet points and indentations with written components for drawing diagrams and flowcharts and tables. Number 3, strategical usage of words. Aside from keywords and technical terms relating to the concept that you can't replace, all the other words you use in your notes is completely up to you. Whatever phrases or words that make more sense to you, use them. You can even use slangs and abbreviations like LOL or WTF if you want to stress certain parts or use a bunch of question marks or exclamation marks or ... to highlight whatever you want to highlight in that sentence. It might look silly and not very professional, but who cares? The notes are for you to use. So when your brain sees that and then registers something in your brain when you're reviewing, that's the goal. The whole goal is when you're reviewing your notes and you see what you've written, your brain can automatically remember, I remember why I wrote this. Okay, I remember now. That's the purpose. It's not for your notes to look good. Now let's talk about the revision step. Honestly, this should be the easiest and least time-consuming step if you spend a lot of time and efforts in the learning and note-taking process. The most important and useful thing is to make everything personal. There's a reason why after watching a movie, your brain will remember scenes or lines that you felt more connected to than the ones that you didn't. Think back on your life. You remember specific moments that brought, a great sense of either happiness or anger or shock or sadness. Whatever it is, it's easier to remember if it becomes more personal because you have developed a personal reaction to that moment. It's the exact same thing when you're memorizing or reviewing for courses. Instead of just making random acronyms to memorize, try to make it silly or memorable to yourself. For example, when I was in medical school in pharmacology, I was studying Parkinson drugs, and two drugs in particular were entacapone and tolcapone. Tolcapone was a stronger drug, but it also had the worst side effect of having liver toxicity. So what I thought for tolcapone was the line from Uncle Ben in Spider-Man when he said, "With great powers come great responsibility." I thought, tolcapone, you have great power because you're a stronger drug, but because of that, you also have a greater responsibility because you could damage someone's liver. And how do I tie that to tolcapone? I thought of the chocolate bar Toblerone. So I literally imagined Uncle Ben sitting in the car biting a Toblerone as he talked to Peter Parker about responsibility. And as silly as that sounded, it worked for me. And I actually saw that drug when it came to my board exam, and I got the question correct. At least I think I did. My point is, whatever you're trying to learn or memorize, try to attach your personal life with it. Whether it's food or people or places, whatever it is that you think is funny or silly or outrageous, it doesn't matter. As long as it helps you remember, that's all that matters. The second thing is add to your notes. Logically, when you start reviewing your notes, you might understand things even better or think of things in a new light. And when that happens, you have to add that onto your notes or change your notes. Just because you made a set of notes doesn't mean it's untouchable. You can underline, cross out, highlight, put stars, put question marks, circle things, whatever it is you want to do, because as you're doing that, again, it's causing your brain to actively think. Number 3, elimination. When you're reviewing your notes, the easier things become quite redundant because you already know it. So instead of looking at that every single time you review your notes, because it makes it look like your notes are very, very thick, you can start crossing those things out. It's like a game of Survivor, basically. Which concept gives you the hardest time is the one that survives till the end. So every round you're reviewing your notes are actually getting shorter because you're eliminating more things that you already know. Not only is that time efficient, but it also gives you a great confidence boost because you can see the end is close. And lastly, beware of second-time offenders. When you're reviewing something for the first time, it's normal to forget certain things or struggle with certain things again. Completely normal. Once you've covered them and you review again, let's say in a few hours or the next day, and you forget something again, that's when you know you have to start it. You have to spend a dedicated amount of time on that thing. You have to be hard on yourself here. Forgetting things multiple times usually means you don't fully understand it. So these are the different strategies that I have for studying. As you can see, the underlying root for all of these is to get your brain to actively think. None of those steps are easy. They all require you to use your mental capacity to do some work. It will ultimately save you more time and less stress if you train your brain to actively think whenever you're studying.